Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Off Hours with the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake, and today I'm excited to have one of my golfing buddies with us today. And when I say golfing buddies, it is a hack show out there on the golf course. John Wadell from Peerless, who is their single barrel curator, as well as co-founder of Stave and Bean Coffee Company. So, John, thanks for joining.
No, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. I love doing these.
Yeah. This is exciting to, we have some really funny stories on the golf course. And I know, getting out and doing things after hours is something you like to do a lot. Like, you are very passionate about whiskey in your job, but you are a kind of a jack of all trades when it comes to just the area of whiskey and the things you do outside of that. And, I'm excited for people to learn about all the things you do. And I'm really excited I'm going to ask you one question first. And that is, not only do you do single barrel curation for Peerless, but you're also really involved with Kobe. And speaking of, this is Juneteenth just happened, talk to me a little bit about that and how that has kind of, impacted your influence in that diversity, equity, and inclusion role that you may play in the bourbon field.
It's such a weird story how I got involved with that. I was in the bourbon industry with Peerless for about almost probably like 3.5, 4 years almost. And I happened to be at Bourbon Bistro. It's a well-known restaurant here in Louisville, Kentucky, owned by Jason Bronner, does amazing barrel picks, got his own brand, Buzzard Bruce. But it's a cool hangout. If you know anything about bourbon Bistro, I like to say Jason was like the godfather, right? Like, he was doing this before bourbon was ever cool, like doing the picks and having that kind of whole persona there at the restaurant. But it was a great place to hang out and just have a cocktail after work. And I happened to be sitting there, and I ran into a guy named Stefan, who's kind of like their liaison of Kobe. And he's like, you should really meet this guy, Jamar Mack. He's the president, founder here at Kobe. And it's a nonprofit here in Louisville, Kentucky. It stands for Kentucky's first official bourbon enthusiast. And I met Jamar there at Bourbon Bistro, and we were talking. He's like, have you heard of Kobe? And I was like, no. He's like, well, you really should. So he invited me to their next meeting they have, because they have monthly meetings just to discuss, what's coming up, what they're doing in the community and things like that. Because they do barrel picks, and raise money for the community. And, they don't make any money off of it. It's really just we keep it very small. It's limited to, we have, I think up to date, 56 members there in Kobe. We got the big group chats and things like that. And so I went to some of the meetings. They were talking business, and I thought they were just having me as a guest there, right? So I actually had stepped away when they were going to talk business and club business and everything. And I came back afterwards, and this went on for several times. And finally, I asked Jamar, I said, hey, can I be in Kobe? How do I get more involved? And he literally looked at me, and he started laughing. He's like, man, I thought you were so disinterested. He's like, I brought you to these meetings to see if you want to join. He's like, you kept on stepping away during our business part of things. He's like, people were even asking in the group, hey, does he not like this? Does he not want to be in here? And it was just that moment of clarity, oh my God, they were totally trying to see if I would join their group. And it's a great group of guys. It's, we have a couple of different members in there. We have Andrew Webrink, who's, from ISC, Independent Stave Company. And it's just a well-diverse group. And, what they truly are passionate about is raising money for the community, right? Of course, it's an excuse to get together and drink some good whiskey and hang out. But in all, we don't have a certain organization that we work with. We more reach out and see what the community needs and try to raise money for different things. Because we like to be involved with a little bit of everything and just make sure that we're giving back to any of the leftover food. We have this guy, Stefan Anderson, great member in the group. He's our liaison. Any of the leftover food, he takes to the homeless shelter, gives out to them, feeds them. We really try to make sure that we stay focused on what our actual goal is there, but also get to meet up and drink and have a good time and shoot the shit, basically.
Yeah. No, it's a good excuse to get around the guys and do something, around bourbon and whiskey just in general. And I know they do a lot of great things, and I know you're super passionate about it. And so I just wanted to bring that up first. But, moving into this, spin-off of bourbon, right? You have this idea around coffee. right? And this comes to fruition in this new venture that you have. How'd you come up with this idea of, this coffee company that you would, co-found and go to, start building a brand?
So, I mean, it was actually kind of crazy, like COVID happened, most distilleries, they shut down their tours and things like that, but production still stayed open. So while we're still going to work every day, you got to think we still had a lot of free time on our hands because, trucking was shut down, all this other stuff, but we knew that we still had to continue making whiskey during this period. So we had a little bit of fun at work and things like that, but I was trying to think during that time, you had I'm sure you experienced the same thing, friends that lost their jobs or, went on, not welfare, but what am I thinking of here?
Unemployment.
Unemployment. Jesus. Yeah. Sorry. Unemployment. And it was, so a lot of them went on unemployment and things like that, lost their jobs. And I was trying to think to myself, like, wow, I never was in that danger. I was like, I should really have like a plan B just besides, leaning on, just one income. And during the single barrel process, a lot of times we dump these barrels, right? And you've had some of our single barrel picks. We like to name them, just kind of give an idea. We have right now we have toasted caramel citrus and mixed oak and berries at the distillery. So when we dump these barrels, because of, rye whiskey and bourbon, they can only go in brand new barrels. So a lot of these barrels, we just send back to the cooperage. They could just get a little bit of money back for our next order of barrels because they send them off. And I was really thinking to myself, how can I I work in this beautiful industry. We obviously just discard barrels and things like that. How can I reuse maybe some of these? How can I recapture some of those aromatics and flavors that we get from these barrels? And I love coffee. And at the time, I don't know if it was the algorithm on my Instagram, Facebook, whatever, but I was seeing barrel aged coffee at this time, also as well. I'm like, that's interesting. So I started doing a little bit of research about barrel aged coffee companies, who's doing it, how's it going about. And there was two coffee companies that really came up when you search barrel aged coffee at the time. It was Oak and Bond, which is their home base is located out of North or South Carolina. I think it's North Carolina. Then you had Cooper's Cat what was the other one? It's been so long now. I can't remember. They were located up in Maryland. And I was like, wow, the number one barrel aged coffee doesn't even come from Kentucky, right? Kentucky rules, bourbon and things like that pretty much. So I ordered some beans and started playing around, just put them in some barrel char in a container, just seeing roast them before, roast them after, because I love coffee. If you look up the statistics, I think it's 78 or 82% of them, everybody in America starts their day off with a cup of coffee.
I am not one of them.
Man, good for you, because it's just as addicting as anything else. So it kind of just made sense. I was looking at barrel aged coffee and I was like, well, I have everything right here that I can experiment with this. So I started throwing some beans in some containers, some barrel char and things like that. And it was a huge difference from barrel aging to, beforehand. And I met one of my good friends that I met through my main title there at Peerless is the Barrel program that I've done barrel picks. His name was Corey Welsh. He sits on the nonprofit. It's a nonprofit. It's the New Orleans Bourbon Festival. They put on a festival every year. They raise money. And I met him through doing barrel picks. And he happened to come in one day, right during the lift of COVID, where we could start to have people back in the distillery. And he'd just been like, man, what have you been up to? And I was like, check this out. I'm barrel aging coffee. Here, I got some stuff actually for you to try. I mean, within 20 seconds of him, me showing him my operation, he's all like, I want in. He lives in New Orleans, which is one of the biggest coffee ports here. So he loves coffee. He's a big espresso drinker. He's and literally he came back 2 days later with $10,000. Here, I'll give you money. Let's get this going. So I was like, well, wait a second. I wasn't expecting that. And, but I think he saw something in it as well and knew that we could do something with it. So that's really kind of how we got started. He came back and that's when it became really serious because he's an engineer for Shell. So, I mean, he's got I'm more of a manual labor person, right? Let me unload, load, choose the barrels, figure out the flavor profiles, where he's very business savvy, but still a huge coffee expert.
Yeah.
So we got with them, and then we got Quills here in Louisville, which if you know about Quills Coffee, they're hands down one of the best roasters here in town. I think they have about 4 or 5 locations. We met with Nathan and Brian over there at Quills, and they roast everything for us, but they help us develop these roast profiles. And but the cool thing about it is Corey lives in New Orleans, so we source all different types of beans. So we have Costa Rican, Honduran, New Guinea, El Salvadorian. We're all about the quality, just like in the whiskey that I do with Peerless. I want to make sure it's top quality. We don't want to skimp. We spend a lot of extra money on beans and things like that, just because we don't want to skimp on, the quality of what we're putting out there.
Yeah. So are you going to be doing some international travel here now that, it's been lifted a little bit, and go source some beans for yourself?
Man, yeah, I would love. So I know Corey and myself were both trying to work on maybe getting a private pilot license, because how cool would it be to there's a place here called Bourbon Phil. It's like $10,000. Obviously, it's going to take more than just me showing up $10,000, but they have a whole program. They have the cost and everything built out. And you can fly, once you're in New Orleans, you can fly pretty much anywhere in South America almost, on these planes that you're willing to fly.
All I see is you in the show Narcos right now. That's just I don't know why that picture is you flying in a little prop plane, just dropping off coffee beans at the distillery as you fly by.
Give me a good Hawaiian shirt, some blue blockers, sunglasses, man. I'll be in heaven.
And you'll be wearing the Don Johnson before we get over with.
Yeah.
The all white suit and the deep V. Oh man. So putting your coffee hat on, what's your favorite profile that you've created today from your coffee company?
So one of the best and one of our best sellers, obviously we do a good job with anything, but my personal favorite, we do a Sumatran bean aged in a cherry bitters barrel that we get from Woodford Reserve. Because, we get our barrels from all over the place, but they do, their own bitters. And
yep.
It is just absolutely fantastic. It's hard to describe. If you know anything about cherry bitters, things like that, you get that aroma through the coffee after you brew it. Whether you do a Chemex French press, the aromatics on it are fantastic. And even Quills was blown away by the Sumatran cherry bitters barrel. And then we also do a blend with it, because we have a whole cocktail series of coffee that we do. We don't add any flavoring into this. This is just our fun little riffs that we do. So we do a blend of a Sumatran bean that's aged in a cherry bitters barrel with a blend of an El Salvadorian that's aged in a Peerless bourbon barrel. And we call it an old-fashioned blend because, you can use cherry bitters or bitters and things like that in old-fashions, plus it's made with bourbon. But it's a fantastic coffee. And whether you like cold brew or, hot, especially right now it's hot out here, it makes fantastic cold brew. I would love to find a manufacturer that help us make some Stave and Bean cold brew coffee, because it really is one of my favorite ways to drink it.
Get you some nitrous and just be ready to roll.
Yeah.
Nothing like some cold brew and your shot of espresso to get you going in the morning. Actually, I'm looking at some bitters right now. And bitters are crazy, right? You can get a lot of flavors. And my buddy who was on the prior week episode of this, Bob from Novio's Bistro, also is part of Allen Well, which is a bitters company out of the Northeast, but they have blueberry bitters. And I am super excited to dive into those in an old fashioned. So change cherry for blueberry and see what we can do there.
Dude, I'm telling you. So one of my favorite bitter companies, it's called Scrappy's Bitters. Fantastic. I met him at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival last year in Bardstown, and they do a great job. But since I've had Stave and Bean, we connected with a girl named Randy. She's Randy Medford. She's out of she used to work at Bardstown Bourbon Company, but now she runs the cocktail program and is the beverage director at Barn 8 here in Louisville. And she makes coffee brittle for our coffee company that we're just getting ready to release and kind of come out with. And let me tell you, if you're ever in Louisville, or they're actually outside of Louisville, Barn 8's in Goshen, but when you talk about it, it's just 5 minutes outside of Louisville, pretty much. But she does.
He's lying. It's not 5 minutes outside of Louisville. It's out of Louisville proper 5 minutes, yes, but it's 35 minutes out of downtown.
From the distillery to, you're right, to the distillery from Kentucky Peerless on 10th Street to Barn 8, it's about 36, 37 minutes. But she does coffee brittles. She makes her own tonic, and we're actually she's going to start making our cherry bitters for our cherry bitters coffee that we do, because all they do is they take a bourbon barrel, put cherry bitters in it, age it, and then that's the barrels that we use for our coffee. So we're going to start using Peerless bourbon barrels, aging some cherry bitters in there, and then using it for coffee, because she does a fantastic job. She's very talented. And she does all our cocktail curation and everything for Stave and Bean.
Yeah. So, I mean, thinking about like off hours, right? Things you do outside of work, right? This has got to take up a huge chunk of that, right? But outside of, really kind of running a second business and getting it going, especially here in Kentucky, like what are some of the things that you like to enjoy when you're just kind of, down? Like we've talked about, like obviously you have Kobe, so that's an extra thing. You have Stave and Bean. Like what are some of the other things outside of our terrible golfing that you, kind of enjoy just in the city or, outside the city?
Man, I love hanging out with my dogs. I got 2 dogs. I got a golden retriever named Rhaegar. He's about 6 years old. And I got a little mix of something named Suki. She's about 5. So, man, I love going and exploring the city. I do a lot of kayaking too as well. But man, we have great cocktail and food bars. I'm a big foodie. So, anytime I can go check out a restaurant, check out the cocktail menu. I love going out and exploring a little bit. Avid camper, but there's always you got to have a good balance, man. You got to have that separation between, work and things outside of work, because even outside of work, everything that you're kind of involved in is somewhat whiskey, bourbon related. You always have that, I don't want to say kind of a front, but you're always working pretty much. So it's nice to kind of disconnect. I think every person has to find that little something that disconnects them necessarily from what they do for a living, to just being able to enjoy other things outside of the spirit industry or whatnot. And for me, that would be spending time with, like I said, my 2 dogs, or just golfing, hanging out with you guys. Because even though we all work in the industry and we go out and play golf, what I love about that is, man, we all work for different companies and different things. And it's so cool to be able to connect on that level where we can go out and have a couple of drinks, hang out, and, you feel like you can let your guard down a little bit, right? Tell stories, or you know what I mean.
You don't have to sell yourself. What's
that?
We've already sold each other ourselves, right? You don't have to go out there and impress anybody. We all know what everyone does.
Yeah,
you can just be yourself.
I can go out there and whiff a drive and be okay with it that you all saw that right there, right? Because I don't care, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Hit +6 on a par 3.
Yeah. Hey, we've all been there. Don't you worry. I may look tall and athletic, but golf is a game that will humble even the most athletic individual. It doesn't matter. And then you add in the fact that you're left-handed and you just picked up the sport, you're not doing that bad.
Yeah, right? That's what I try to tell myself. I love the fact that you said that will humble you real quick, because no matter what you do for a living, you get out there and play golf, and if you're not it will humble. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just, what do they call it? What does Brandon call it? The breakfast ball. I love that. I love that rule. The first hit of the day.
I have a breakfast ball on a lot of tee boxes.
And like I said, I think that's a real key, man. While it is the industry is big, you can't take it too seriously. At the end of the day, we're not curing cancer. We're not doing we're making whiskey and bourbon. People enjoy it from all around the world. But if you're not having fun while you're doing it, you're doing something wrong. So that's the key, just finding that equal balance between everything.
Yeah, 100%. And so you talked about being a foodie. I'm big on Louisville food myself. What's your new spot that you're kind of recommending people to go try right now?
All right. So I'll say 2 things here. One, if you're coming to Louisville, I'm saying go to Bourbon Bistro. They have a 1-page menu. I'm a very indecisive person as it is anyways. So I love just the simplicity of everything. Because if you know anything, if they have a 1-page menu, you know they do everything very well on there. But if you want to branch out and do anything besides Bourbon Bistro, which I always suggest, it's where I take a lot of people to, I would say one of the best things you could probably go to, in my opinion, is Bar Betty. I love Barbetti, man. They do. It's like a little Italian little place. It's kind of expensive, but I mean, it's the same place you go if you want a cocktail or anything like that. But secretly, I love Aperol spritzes. I know that's weird because I work in the bourbon industry, but they have like 6-7 different Aperol spritzes that you can like order and have. That I could suck down like 4 of those, and especially now that it's summer, it's very refreshing.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah. So like, if I could build like my perfect Louisville evening, right, it would actually be someplace in Nulu. I lean Cuban, so La Bodeguita, perfect way to start off the evening. Then, maybe go grab a please and thank you cookie, like right across the street, or go to Louisville Creamery, and then follow that up with an after dinner seltzer at the local seltzery. Big fan of the seltzer right now. I don't know why. But also I always recommend Vincenzo's when people come into town. I mean,
Vincenzo's is good. Whatever seltzers you brought to golfing, what were those? That was like one of
the Jim Beam hard seltzers
I've ever had.
Yeah.
Oh man, dude. Like if I could convince Peerless, like we need to start making seltzers right now. Like I wish I could I wish I could convince them.
Oh, so that's the craziest thing. So like I finished off so let me rephrase that. So I finished off the last of the 2 packs that they sent me, which were 2 6-packs. They sent the podcast them, and I gave some out, and like I found another one in my like parents' fridge, and it was the ginger one. Man, like I just poured that over some more ice and set up by the pool, and it was like the perfect highball. Like I don't know, I'm not a huge Jim Beam white label. I'm assuming that's what they put in it, but like the ratio, and the citrus one is also killer. I've been trying to find them and I can't find them anymore. And it's kind of sad because
I've never seen them until you showed up there. I was like, man, these are actually really good.
Yeah. So shout out to Jim Beam on the podcast. But I think seltzers are still hot.
Speaking of Jim Beam, I was at Bourbon Bistro last night. Cause like I said, that's like my go-to place here in Louisville. Like you come here, they do these Parmesan grits with deep fried oysters with pickled red peppers that are fantastic. But I was hanging out with Jason Bronner, and I don't know if you remember that old cocktail video of the girl that makes the mint julep, but she does the sugar cubes and the big tall like glass. She's like, now I have 2 ounces of bourbon. She fills it all the way up, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what the hell? So we sit there, and I showed Jason for the first time. He's like, I want to recreate that. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, like, let's do it. It's like, I literally videotaped him. And here's the strange part about it. So, I mean, he did it right in the glass. We didn't have sugar cubes, so we used sugar packets, which is equivalent to, 1 cube of sugar. And like, he mushed up a bunch of mint and everything. And he poured probably like 5 ounces of bourbon in. Like, if he ever knows like what a highball or big, like, I think it was a pint glass she was using, filled up with whiskey, like nothing but whiskey. And he mixed it back and forth, and we did the straw sample. Here's the crazy thing. It wasn't that bad. Like, we went step by step what she did, and we were like, oh my God, like if you pour this over some crushed ice with a little bit of powdered sugar, it'd be amazing.
That just goes to show you that even on the highest level, that these people are mass producing a crap ton of whiskey, that even what we maybe with a little bit of an elevated palate, like their base distillate is good enough in any cocktail to hold up, like any cocktail.
Like I just remember tasting it being like, oh, damn. Because if you watch the video, you're like, oh my God, like that's disgusting. Like it's bad. But when you taste it, you're like, holy shit, like this is actually a mint julep. Like, I don't know. But I know like that video went like so like popular and like viral because everyone's like, she doesn't know how to make a mint julep. But if you break it down, like, cause in a rocks glass, like it will hold up as a mint julep if you've never had one.
Well, there you go. Good thing I hate mint juleps, so I'll never drink one of those.
Dude, if you're from Kentucky, the only time you ever have a mint julep is from Derby. Like, suppose I guess people come here all the time, like, what mint julep? I'm like, it's a cocktail, like, but it's more of like a tradition than something you order out every day.
I want to order one at Churchill one time, like around Derby, but I'm like, I just like straight bourbon. And the other thing, you become a bourbon snob, and I don't want to hate. Like if I'm drinking Woodford, I'm drinking Woodford Double Oak. That's not what they have. An Old Forester is fine. And I would rather just drink Old Forester straight because they're a Brown Forman track. Like that's just is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's no way getting around that. That's why you don't see a bunch of different brands there or anything like that. But yeah, it's just, I don't want to say I'm a bourbon snob, but you know how it is. Like when you really enjoy bourbon and whiskey, you drink things that like barrel strength, right? You don't want that. It's not, and I don't feel like it's because you're a snob. You're more of a purist. Like you want all the natural flavor, everything comes from that barrel. That's why you're drinking it. And there's nothing wrong with 80, 90 proof or anything like that out there that are doing it. It's just two different flavor profiles. So I would say, I guess you could say, yes, I become a little bit of like, I love my barrel strength. Like, let me taste your full distillate, everything. Like, I want to know what barrels you're using, how your aging process is going. Because when you add water to it, it just adds so many different variables to how you really can judge a product for it.
Yeah. And there's a time and a place for every type of whiskey is what I tell everybody. And there's a time and a place in this heat wave that we're having that 80 proof whiskey is pretty amazing.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Give me that summer cocktail, like an Aperol spritz or, Just give me a nice bourbon highball. Outside of whiskey, I love a good trash beer. Like if I'm going to north of Bourbon, which is a great place here, they do like New Orleans style food here. Give me a Lone Star. Give me some Lone Star and some crawfish and let me just enjoy myself. Like, I think it's always fun because I've ran into people like outside this and I'll be drinking like a Coors Light or something. They're like, you drink Coors Light? I'm like, man, this is like my water. This is how I hydrate. Like I drink whiskey, almost every day or for tasting barrels, things like that. Like sometimes I just want something crisp, light.
Oh, I'm with you on that. I was at Costco and bought a 30 pack of Mick Ultras, dad beer to the nth degree, and I'm okay with that. But like for me, like if I'm going real crap beer, just give me a Natty Light. Like that's like everyone's like, oh, that's what we drank in college. Like I think Natty Light's just as good as Bud Light.
If not better. I mean, to me, since I got into like really exploring my palate, like Bud Light tastes like bananas. Like every time I taste one, I just got like a banana note to it.
So it's like Jack Daniels.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, a Natty Light, but what's even better? Busch Light Apple. I don't care what you say. If you didn't have a Busch Light Apple at some point when it released it, it's like the most refreshing, crappy, shitty beer you'll ever drink.
Look, this is how I know one of our friends, Brandon, hates me. He gave me a Chicago handshake. And he got me a shot of Merlot, and then you finish that with an Old Style. And that was the worst combination of beverages I've ever had in my life.
Man, I'm a Cubs fan, so I love the Old Style. Man, they sell it up there. It's just like Malort's. I love giving people Malort's if they've never heard of it.
I'm good. We'll just move past this part of the the conversation. But no, as we close up here, I like to ask everyone this question, right? And you've answered it a little bit throughout, but I'm going to ask it really more poignant here. As we think about, and as you think about like really escaping and getting to your off hours, like that moment in between, like what's your advice for people to create that space so that they can have those off hours moments?
My biggest advice, especially being like, as someone in the spirits or whiskey industry, we're in, 47 states, a couple of different countries. The real important thing is like, learn to just disconnect yourself. Like as much as like you think like, oh, I need to always be reading emails, responding to text messages, group chats, things like that. Just whatever, like, learn that it's okay to just disconnect yourself and sometimes just say no. I think the hardest part is you never maybe it's just me, like you never want to displease or anyone or, you're always thinking about the brand or what you're working for, no matter what your job is, depending on what you're doing. But it's okay to just say no sometimes, and it's okay to take time off and just turn off everything. Like I'm not saying like, ignore people, but I mean like just learn that you don't have to respond to everything. it's very important to have a different life outside of work, especially like in the whiskey industry. You know what I mean? Like I said, we go out and play golf, but you know what? Like it doesn't feel like work. I don't feel like I'm representing Peerless out there. It's just a good time, people getting together, drinking, having fun, but also networking, at the same time, like you're learning to connect with people. And like I said, if you can learn to just turn off like that work mode and just separate yourself from work to friends, because everybody just wants to hang out, man. It's no one's trying. It's not 007. Like, let me find out your secrets and things like that. Like, people just want to get to know you and figure out how you got to the point you are and make friends. The biggest thing you do is just make friends in this industry, because that's the biggest thing I take away from everything. I literally take vacation to go hang out with bourbon groups sometimes, just because they know I'm from Peerless, but it's just the hospitality, everything, and the friendships you build from it. So while you learn to disconnect, learn to grow yourself and figure out, what you like and don't like and what you enjoy doing too.
I think that's great. I'm so guilty of always being working and answering emails. So that is a great piece of advice that you just laid out there, even for myself, right? Emails
is the biggest thing. I always tell people, it's okay not to respond to an email. Like, especially if you ever dealt with like a bigger corporate company, think about it, you may send an email, right? It may take them a week to get back to you.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's not like a text message or a phone call. And that's the biggest thing I have to remind myself. Keep track, be organized, but just learn it's okay to not to respond right away. And emails, we always tell, I cannot wait so I can just not have an email address. I just want to spam email. I don't want to work email or anything like that. But it's still, that's the biggest thing.
You own your own company, so I don't think you're getting rid of your email anytime
soon. Yeah.
Well, John, thank you for joining this episode of Off Hours with Bourbon Lens. Really appreciate it. As always, you can find out more about Peerless, where John works at Peerless on social media. Where can people find out more about Stave and Bean?
Yeah, you can join. We have a website, big e-commerce website. We do free shipping. So it's just staveandbean.com, or same thing at Instagram. Or if you want to follow me on Instagram, I am Bourbon_Colonel 86. I keep on forgetting I changed my name, man. I feel like I should go back. Sir_J Wadell is a lot easier to say
than Bourbon Colonel.
Bourbon Colonel, 86. But yeah, follow me on Instagram. Appreciate you having me on here, man. Always a good time. Looking forward to always the next golf outing that we have.
Let's see how many balls we lose between the two of us. Well, that's how we'll keep score from now on. Well, thanks everyone for listening to this episode. As always, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Bourbon Lens, and you can find more about Off Hours at Drink Off Hours on all their social medias. And until next time, cheers.